This is Barkston, a small quiet village just north of Grantham in Lincolnshire, with a very busy through road. It has a population of less than 500 people and is a historic village that was mentioned in a Domesday book. It was here in this village that Stan's sister, Beatrice Olga Jefferson, made her home at a public house in West Street. Olga had been an actress in provincial theatres, never making it as big as her brother Arthur Stanley. She'd moved to the West Midlands for her first 3 months of 1928, appearing at Dudley Opera House. Once the season had ended, she moved to Grantham, and by October of that year, listed her address as the Plough Inn, and was there until 1929, when she went to St Helens and then Liverpool for theatre work. It had been suggested by David Tomlinson that she may have been living in a small, now demolished building in the garden of the public house rather than the inn itself. Following the death of his wife, Venetia, on the 23rd of January 1941, Arthur Jefferson, AJ, moved from London to be with his daughter. One story is that he was afraid of being bombed during the Second World War, while another, more likely reason, is that an 80-year-old man with limited income could not live independently without help. While Barkston was away from the turmoil of World War in London, it must have been a culture shock for AJ, who had lived in the city from 1912. While the village and the pub here gave him company, his only access to the arts was from BBC Radio. The nearest theatre or cinema was in Grantham, 4 miles away. Arthur would have needed the assistance of Bill and Olga to travel there. This would have not been very practical though, given that they ran a pub with its business conducted in the evenings.
Right. Yes, I just wanted to explain that Arthur moved from Glasgow to London 1912 when he got married to his second wife, Venetia. And he was there until 1944. But the bombs started dropping and life was uncomfortable. But worse than that, Venetia took ill, needed to have an operation. It's a fairly routine operation by normal standards, even in 1944, but something went wrong and she died. But the terms of her will required Arthur to vacate the house they were living in, it was her house, within just a matter of months. So here was a man of, and we're not quite sure what his age was, we assume he was born in 1862 because that's what he told us, but we've never ever found a registration of his birth or a baptismal record to confirm it. There are reasons to think he might have been older than that. But nevertheless, at least at that age, it was not the best of place to be trying to find somewhere to live. He did find somewhere temporarily, but then came to Barkston to live with Beatrice, and seems to have been relatively happy, and as Dave was explaining this morning, became a sort of feature in the village as he dressed rather differently from other people, but obviously would go for his walks dressed in his dapper clothes, and seems to be very happy doing so until very late in his life. But the last photograph that I've seen of him shows him as a much diminished figure. He's still able to hold a glass and a cigarette in his left hand, while surrounded by Stan and Oliver and Beatrice and others. But he seems to have shrunk, the way many of us do as we're getting older. And he certainly didn't look anything like the powerful figure that he'd been in his youth. But in many ways, he must have found Barkston a nice, quiet place to spend his final years. I hope that might add something to what people don't already know.
Here we are in West Street, the location that was the Plough Inn. We're in the back garden. It has been converted into a house with 2 flats, and appropriately, number 22 West Street has been named the Old Plough Inn. Just after the First World War, Bill Healy had been a cello and banjo player in the orchestra at the Theatre Royal in Grantham. After seeing Olga on stage, he approached her at his aunt's digs. Olga lived with Bill before they got married, which took place after the death of her estranged husband, William Woods. It is believed that the house may have been in the grounds of what is the garden of the Plough Inn, and that Olga did other work such as hairdressing within this. In 1937, Olga retired from acting and took over the Plough with Bill.
But what you've got is, this is the pub that Olga and Bill ran from 1937 onwards, taking it through war years. And it was also the pub that Stan Laurel, when they were coming over here for the tour in 1947, they came visiting. And they pulled up one day in a huge taxi. Everybody was wondering what was going off. They all came out, and it was a major event that day. And the children came out, and these two film stars walked out of the car and started playing antics. And that's the picture that was taken in front. There's another one. So actually, that's the second one. That's the best one. So you got Ollie, Stan, Ida, Stan's missus, Olga, Beatrice Olga, I should say, and Bill Healy. And that's before they went into the pub. The kids outside were all interested in what was going on. They went in the pub, they started playing darts. First of all, they met Stan's father. We hadn't seen him for 13 odd years. But that actual picture was taken inside there, that room there. And that was Olga and Bill's best room. The pub actually was next door, the back bit there. So the whole pub is not just that bit, it's the whole of that building to there. And you had the pub over on that side, and Stan Laurel playing darts in the pub. And the kids were coming out and they were peering over the shelf, and we were looking inside, they could see Stan Laurel playing. And then Stan Laurel came out and they signed their autographs. And I've been fortunate to, I'd say, meet 2 or 3 or the people who actually met them on that day, including one of the ladies who actually played darts with, so talked about it, Mrs. Ward down the street. Played the darts with them that day. And they all knew Arthur Jefferson. One of the things about Arthur Jefferson, he moved to this pub, let's say, sort of wartime years. And they remember him because he stuck, to be honest with you, he stuck out like a sore thumb in the village, because this is a farming village. And he'll be walking in his finery with his canes and his robes, and he would walk down that street all the way down there. And the kids knew him, they knew him well, and they would hold on his hand and pull him along. They'd probably tease him as well. But so he lived out his latter days here. Arthur Jefferson's room was that one there, in the front. What else can I say? There's a kitchen at the back. We were very lucky a number of years ago to actually go in, being able to go in virtually every year. And what they've done, they've actually kept it in the same mould of what it would look like in terms of a pub. They even had the sash window, which they used as the bar, because this wasn't a normal sort of pub. It was a pub that was effectively only sold beer. And unfortunately, come Saturday nights, because it was such a popular pub, they didn't have enough ale. So it was the pub with no beer, it was termed. So, but it was very popular in the village. And Olga used to do a lot of the singing and playing the piano and keeping the people entertained. And then there were occasions where the troops would come down from Barkston Heath, and there would be potentially fights with the local local gentry. They came on that particular day. Obviously, Stan not seen him for 13 odd years. So there's a newspaper article that covers the time. And Stan Laurel actually visited not just the once.
During World War II, Barkston Heath was home to a contingent of the 9th American Air Force. The Plough was a very popular venue. In fact, they drank so much that the pub would often run dry by the weekend, and earned the name of the pub with no beer. Whilst these American guests were mostly welcomed, the stories are that fights would often happen with the locals, but the landlords were very strict and would not put up with such goings on. Later, the local airbase was used by British 1st Airborne Division, of which Arthur Lowe was a squaddie. He went on, of course, to appear in sitcoms Dad's Army as Captain Mannering. The airfield was located a bit further on over these fields. The Stag Inn is the only working pub in the village. While Laurel and Hardy didn't appear here, there is a picture of them inside. So there used to be a photograph of Stan and Ollie, we've just said, in the pub. We've just been in the pub and asked the barman, and unfortunately the pictures no longer exist, which is a little bit disappointing, but I suppose times move. But one of the locals did actually tell us that they do remember it. In 1947, Bernard Delfont offered Stan and Babe the opportunity to tour the UK theatres. When the boys hit the UK shores in February, Olga and Bill were snowbound in their pub during one of the worst winters on record. So on the 16th of March, at the end of the first week playing at the London Palladium, Stan and Ollie travelled to Grantham for lunch with Stan's family at the Red Lion, followed by a brief visit to the Plough before heading back to London from Grantham by train. Arthur, now aged 85, had not seen Stan since 1936, and of course Stan had a new wife in the form of Ida, so there must have been a lot to catch up on. Local paper, the Grantham Journal, were there to take pictures and report on the event. 2 articles appeared on Friday the 21st of March. A small one on page 7 told of how the boys played darts with the locals in Grantham. The second, a longer article, appeared on the front page with the headlines, "Screen comedian Stan Laurel meets his father after 13 years and Oliver Hardy goes with him." This went into more detail of the meeting, of the family get-together in Barkston, saying that AJ was overcome with joy, and apparently Stan joked that he would race him up the street for £1. They also reported on local children going autograph hunting, one of which belonged to Mrs. Eardley, a more recent owner of the Plough building, who happens to be 98 years old, and we've met her today, bless her. On returning to London, Stan sent Olga a telegraph with a message. Again, thanks dears for the wonderful visit. Can't express fully our thanks. Arrived back an hour late, but so happy we made the trip. Our best love to Dad, selves and all the gang. Bye now and God bless. Stan, Ida and Babe. The gang being the customers at the Plough. Despite the busy schedule, Stan did visit the family a further twice. On June the 9th, the boys played in Glasgow for 2 weeks, before heading to Skegness for a week, beginning June the 23rd in 1947. They called into Grantham on the way to Skegness for a brief visit, again at the Red Lion. The following week, they were able to spend a bit longer visiting Barkston before heading off to Edinburgh. This was the last time Stan and his father met up. Stan returned to the USA after the tour in January 1948. Arthur passed away of heart failure a year later, on the 15th of January 1949. What little possessions he had, he left to Olga, and in subsequent years, they have ended up in the hands of private collectors. Only a handful of people turned up for his funeral at St Nicholas's Church in Barkston, followed by interment at a nearby cemetery, Barkston and System Burial Ground, on Wednesday the 19th of January 1949. Although he would have known hundreds of people during his long career, he'd outlived many. His death had received little in the way of newspaper announcements. Bill and Olga chose not to have a memorial stone erected. It wasn't until October the 18th, 1994, that one was erected. It was at the Detroit 1982 International Sons of the Desert Convention when the late Bill Cuban announced that he had located AJ's final resting place, and he had set up a fund for the headstone. Eric Woods took over the project in July 1994, and in September he commissioned a retired stonemason from Cumbria to produce a stone made from green Lakeland stone. The wording on the stone was given the approval by Lois Laurel and other members of the Jefferson family. Every year, near to the anniversary of Stan's birth, members of the Sons of the Desert visit Barkston to pay their respects to Arthur. Arthur, the writer, the actor, the theatre owner, the agent, and the father of the comedy genius, Arthur Stanley Jefferson, Stan Laurel. In 1950, Olga and Bill left the Plough Inn to become licensees of the Bull Inn, located at 5 Market Place in Bottesford, 12 miles away on the road to Nottingham. So here we are in Bottesford. Bottesford is a larger village in Leicestershire with a population of over 3,000 people, a train station, several shops and 3 public houses. Bill and Olga ran the Bull, an 18th century coaching inn, between 1950 and the late 1950s. When Stan and Babe did their UK tours of the 1950s, they returned to the area again to meet up with family on several occasions. On Easter Sunday, the 13th of April 1952, Stan, Babe and Ida and Lucille booked in at the County Hotel in Nottingham before being driven the 15 miles to Bottesford. This is where they had a Sunday roast and a few beers. The pub had been closed to local patrons for 5 hours before reopening. The Nottingham Post did an interview and took a couple of photos of the boys eating a meal and married couples enjoying a drink in the corner of this bar. The boys returned again the following year when they were appearing at the Nottingham Empire for the Christmas show of 1953. During a busy week of rehearsals, press interviews and publicity stunts, they found time once again to have dinner with Olga and Bill. The now famous photo of the occasion of the boys serving behind the bar, now that would have been a day to remember. This photo was taken on Christmas Day and was printed in the Radio Times. This is the bar where Laurel and Hardy stood and pulled a pint with Stan's sister Olga. In May 1954, Stan took time out from his upcoming engagement at the Aston Hippodrome in Birmingham, starting on May the 10th to visit his sister in Bottesford. This was probably the last time that the siblings were together. We don't know if Babe was with him in this time for the visit. We also have no photos or press of this trip. After Bill Healy passed away, Olga retired to the northeast of England to be with her daughter. Olga passed away in 1978 and was cremated in Sunderland. Press cuttings from Laurel and Hardy's trip to the Bull whilst they're eating the meal with Olga. Taking tea with the Healys.
There's another one of them.
Here's some more. Somebody's kindly dated them, so we've got some more information. And that's Stan and Ollie behind the bar at the Bull.